What's going on, ma'am?
I'm dying, that's what's up.
Irving Fire Department.
Ma'am, are you still there? Ma'am, are you still there?
"911. What's going on? I'm dying. 2 teenage girls, 1 taxi cab, and a father who would disappear for 12 years. But today, he's agreed to talk. It's easy to get lost in Texas. Among the endless highways and sprawling empty plains, you can vanish without a trace." And that's exactly what Yasser Said did. For over a decade, this Egyptian-born cab driver was one of America's most wanted fugitives. Hunted by the FBI, featured on wanted posters across the country, with a $100,000 bounty on his head. But before he disappeared into the Texas wind, he did something unthinkable. He murdered his own daughters. 18-year-old Amina, 17-year-old Sarah, shot them both, left them to die in the back of his taxi on New Year's Day, 2008. The crime made national headlines. The media called it an honor killing. And now, after years of silence, Yasser Said has agreed to speak. "I'm driving east from San Antonio. At the end of this lonely highway sits a man responsible for one of the most haunting crimes in recent American history. And today, for the first time, he says he's ready to talk." But here's the thing about murderers. They rarely tell the truth. Before we meet the killer, we need to meet the victims. Because Amina and Sarah Said weren't just statistics. They were real, vibrant, alive. Oh my God, I just realized I'm recording. This is my room. Well, mostly mine. It's partly Sarah's. Amina was the older sister. Intelligent, ambitious, with dreams of becoming a doctor. She was 18 years old. Sarah was 17, close with her sister, full of life. Both girls were born and raised in Irving, Texas. They were American through and through. Raised on Friday night football, high school dances, and the promise of freedom. But inside their home, freedom didn't exist. Their father, Yasser Said, had emigrated from Egypt decades earlier. He worked as a cab driver, married a white American woman named Patricia, or Tessie, when she was just 15 years old. He was 29. The age gap alone should have raised red flags. But it was only the beginning. Yasser Said ruled his household with an iron fist. No dating, no boys, no parties, no alcohol. His daughters were expected to obey without question. And when they didn't, there were consequences. He was obsessed with videotaping, mostly the girls. It was a great insight into their lives, but also into Yasser Said. His perversions, his control. Yasser filmed everything. Hundreds of hours of home videos, documenting every moment of his daughters' lives. On the surface, these videos looked innocent. A father capturing memories. But look closer, and something darker emerges. He would follow them to work. Film them without their knowledge. Watch their every move. "She can't see us from inside the night. She smiled to the customers. Part of her job. She's in trouble." This wasn't love. This was surveillance. This was control taken to its most extreme form. And as Amina and Sarah grew older, as they became teenagers navigating the complexities of American adolescence, the tension in the Said household reached a breaking point. Because there was one thing Yasser Said valued above all else. His daughter's virginity. In his mind, Amina and Sarah weren't individuals with hopes and dreams. They were property. Commodities to be controlled, protected, and eventually sold off in arranged marriages back in Egypt. But Amina and Sarah had other plans. They wanted what every American teenager wants. To choose their own futures. To fall in love. To be free. And that desire for freedom would cost them everything. By late 2007, the Said household had become a pressure cooker ready to explode. Amina had a friend named Eric. Sarah was dating a boy named Eddie. When Yasser discovered his daughters were seeing boys, his rage was volcanic. He began tracking their every move, checking phone records, following them, and then the threats began. On December 21st, 2007, Amina did something brave. She reached out to a teacher. "Hey Miss Hopkins, it's Amina. Sarah and I are talking and we're having a lot of issues at home. We both decided that you're the only person that we can 100% trust. God, I am so scared right now. It's crazy." In that email, Amina laid bare the nightmare she and Sarah were living. She told the teacher about her father's violent threats, about how he had taken Sarah into a room and specifically threatened to hurt her very badly if she didn't reveal information about the boys they were seeing. But the most chilling part of Amina's email was this: "We are running away before the break ends. I know he will search for us until he finds us, and he will, without any drama or doubt, kill us." Let those words sink in. Amina knew. She predicted her own murder. And she was absolutely right. On Christmas Day, 2007, Amina and Sarah, along with their mother Patricia, secretly fled the said home. They were terrified, but they were determined to start a new life. Eddie and Eric, the boys who cared about them, helped them escape. They found an apartment. For one brief week, the girls tasted freedom. But then, their mother made a decision that would seal their fate. Patricia told the girls she wanted to visit her own mother's grave. She convinced them to come back to Texas. But it was a lie. Patricia had no intention of visiting any grave. She was taking the girls back to their father. Back to Yasser Said. When Amina found out, it was too late. The trap had been set. And now, we reached the night that would change everything. New Year's Day, 2008. Around 7 p.m., Yasser Said told Amina and Sarah he wanted to take them out to dinner. Just the three of them. To talk, he put the girls in his taxicab and told their mother she wasn't invited. Patricia Said watched as her husband drove away with their daughters. She would never see them alive again. What happened next, in that taxicab, in the final minutes of Amina and Sarah's lives, is something only one person truly knows. And he's about to tell his version of events. But first, let me tell you what we do know. At 7:29 p.m., Yasser Said answered a phone call from his wife. He was still in the car with his daughters. He made no mention of any threat, no mention of any danger. Just 4 minutes later, at 7:33 p.m., a desperate call came through to 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm dying. It was Sarah, using her last breath, her final moments of life, to call for help. Help. My dad shot me. I'm dying. Where are you? I'm in my dad's cab. And then, silence. When police arrived at the Omni Hotel parking lot in Irving, they found Yasser Said's abandoned taxi. Inside, slumped in the backseat, were Amina and Sarah. Both had been shot multiple times. Both were dead. Their father was nowhere to be found, and he wouldn't be seen again for 12 long years. The manhunt for Yasser Said became one of the most intensive in Texas history. The FBI placed him on their 10 most wanted list. News outlets across the country covered the case. The term honor killing entered the American consciousness. But despite thousands of tips, despite a $100,000 reward, Yasser Said had vanished. Some speculated he'd fled to Egypt. Others thought he might be in Canada or Mexico. The truth was far more shocking. For 12 years, while the FBI scanned the globe looking for him, Yasser Said was hiding in plain sight. Just 30 miles from where he murdered his daughters. In a small, inconspicuous house in Justin, Texas. His brother and his own son were helping him, bringing him supplies, keeping him hidden, and all the while, the memory of Amina and Sarah faded from the public eye. Until a filmmaker named Nina Najad refused to let their story die. We wanted the nation to know who he was and what he had done. He was obsessed with videotaping, mostly the girls. It was a great insight into not just their lives, but also into Yasser Said and just his perversions, his control. Nina's documentary, The Price of Honor, premiered in 2014. It brought renewed attention to the case. And it did something else too. It rattled Yasser Said's family. After a screening, Nina received death threats from Yasser's son, Islam. The threats were vicious and desperate, and they told Nina something crucial. The Said family was scared, and when people are scared, they make mistakes. The documentary helped push Yasser Said back onto the FBI's radar. And in 2020, after 12 years of freedom, an anonymous tip led authorities to that house in Justin, Texas. On August 26, 2020, FBI agents surrounded the property. And finally, after more than a decade on the run, Yasser Said was arrested. The man who thought he'd gotten away with murder was about to face justice. In 2022, Yasser Said went to trial. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. The phone records placed him with his daughters at the exact time of the murders. Sarah's own 911 call identified him as the shooter. The gun he left in the taxi matched the bullets that killed the girls. But Yasser Said has never been a man to accept responsibility. Taking the stand in his own defense, through a translator, he spun an elaborate conspiracy theory. It was a secret agenda. All the media was steered in a certain direction and fueled against me so that I would not get a fair trial. According to Said, he was the victim. He claimed unknown assailants were following him that night. He claimed he fled the taxi out of fear for his own life, leaving his daughters behind. He claimed someone else shot them in the 4 minutes between his last phone call and Sarah's desperate 911 plea. The jury didn't buy it. After deliberating, they found Yasser Said guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His brother Yasser and his son Islam, who helped him hide for 12 years, were convicted of aiding and abetting a fugitive. Both are now serving long sentences in federal prison. But even after conviction, even after being stripped of his freedom, Yasser Said maintained his innocence. And that brings us to today. To this interview. To the moment I've been building toward. Because Yasser Said, the man who murdered his own daughters and hid for over a decade, has agreed to speak. And I'm about to sit across from him and try to get inside the mind of a killer. Good morning, Mr. Said. You've agreed to sit with me for an hour, right? And truthfully answer my questions. You've agreed to that, right? If I can, of course. Yes. And so why are you talking to me today? I want my voice to be heard. The FBI knows that my case is being used to achieve cheap political points. Cheap political points. You say the FBI knows that you are innocent. They know that, and I will tell you why. This is what Yasser Said wants me to believe. That he's innocent. That he's the victim of an elaborate conspiracy. That the real killers are still out there, and he's taking the fall for political reasons. It's absurd, but it's the story he's sticking to. And as I sit across from him, watching him speak, I realize something chilling. He believes it, or at least, he's convinced himself he does. Let me ask you this. In your letters to the judge, you write, in my case, you could smell conspiracy in the atmosphere. So that's what this is about. Conspiracy, conspiracy. Of course. After all these years, do you still deny your guilt, sir? Silence. For a moment, Yasser Said just stares at me. And in that silence, I can feel the weight of 2 young lives lost. 2 daughters who will never grow up, never fall in love, never have children of their own. But before we dive into the night of the murders, I want to understand the man sitting across from me. So I start with his past. Mr. Said, before we get into the case, we'd like to learn a little bit more about you. You come from Egypt, right? Yes. And you married into a rather poor white American Christian family, Tissi. If you call her Tissi, you were 30 years old, right? Almost 29. And she was a minor, right? She was 15 or 16. She was 16. In fact, Patricia Said was only 15. Below the legal age of consent in Texas. But Yasser doesn't seem troubled by this. That is a very big age difference here. You understand that, right? In your culture, is that quite common? That's common over there. Not common. Shortly after you're married, you have these two beautiful daughters. What do you remember about them? They are smart. They study. I have a library full of movies about them. I was awake with the camera in my hands. You have a lot of home movies, right? About almost 100. I remember you talked about that in court. You talked about how these home videos show everything. How is this? You can tell. If you look at the kid's face, you can tell if this kid's happy or he have a problem. You can tell. As Yasser talks about his home videos, I notice something. There's excitement in his voice. Pride, even. But when I ask him to describe his daughters, that energy vanishes. What was Amina like growing up? She's a normal teenager. She's okay. She's smart. They are good kids. That's what I'm saying. And Sarah, what was she like? It's the same. She and her sister, they are very close. His answers are flat, emotionless. For a man who claims to have loved his daughters, he shows remarkably little feeling when talking about them. Dr. Robert Hanlon, a forensic psychologist from Northwestern University Medical School, reviewed this interview. And he noticed the same thing I did. He's not interested in discussing these types of family issues. He wants to talk about himself. This man is extremely egotistical, self-centered. Some, particularly some psychopaths, narcissistic psychopaths, they want the attention. Father actually is an example for his kids. Father is an example, and they never saw me like doing something wrong. Going to a nightclub or drunk. I have a habit to drink or alcoholic or drugs, do drugs. Like they didn't see that. I consider myself an example for them. There it is. Even when asked about his daughters, Yasser Said makes it about himself. About how great he was. How perfect. How they should have been grateful. But the reality was far different. Now, your daughters were born and raised in Texas, right? And they were becoming naturally more Americanized, and that was a problem for you, right? No, we don't. We like America. We like the rules in America. What about women's and girls' rights? We like the freedoms that women and girls have here to choose their own lifestyles. This is East and this is West. You have to understand, we can work together. We can do beautiful things together. But sometimes when you come to issues like a family, we look different of you. Translation: in Yasser Said's worldview, American freedoms don't apply inside his home. His daughters might have been born in Texas, but they were expected to live by his rules. Egyptian rules. Rules that stripped them of autonomy and choice. When they entered their later teenage years, they naturally became more interested in boys, right? This has happened with most of the families here, recent girls in America and boyfriends. But for you, that was strictly prohibited. Is that fair? I don't like this. I'm telling you. So no dating and no sex before marriage. No dating, no sex, no alcohol. No alcohol, no drugs, no party. But here's where Yasser Said's hypocrisy becomes crystal clear. Because according to filmmaker Nina Najad, Yasser wasn't the pious, moral man he claimed to be. Yasser is not a religious person. He grew up in a Muslim household, but he's not like he went to a mosque every day. He drank, he smoked, which of those are all against the Quran. So he's not this pious Muslim man. It is very much about control. It is very much having dominance, being the head of the household. And when you have your daughters who are rebelling, you have to gain that control. You wanted the girls to be wed in arranged marriages in Egypt, right? Isn't arrange. Now this is a big story because some people, they don't know what that means. They think we force the girl to marry the man we like, which is wrong. But Amina had a different perspective. In her writings, she described her fear that her father intended to, in her words, sell them to the highest bidder, to an older man that she did not love, in a land that she said she hated. When I confront Yasser with his daughter's own words, his reaction is telling. What do you think about it? Very funny. Very funny. Really, I'm laughing. Did you see me? I laugh. It's very funny. He's laughing. At his dead daughter's fears. At her terror. At the desperation she felt. Here's a spontaneous laugh there. He's laughing at her. To me, that's very revealing about his character. He's a wall of denial. He wants to try to spin this with regard to the deaths of his two daughters. The conversation turns darker. I ask Yasser about his surveillance of the girls, about how he followed them with his camera, about his obsession with their every move. You were spying on the girls, right? You were following them with your camera when they were at work. She can't see us from inside the night. She smiled to the customers. Bella. She has to. Part of her job. She's in trouble. You're talking about our culture in the family. There is this chain of command. Chain of command. Yes. I'm directing my kids. I'm telling them what to do, to make sure they didn't harm themselves. They didn't go do a suspicious activity. That's my rights, including sex, right? We don't allow this to happen. And here we arrive at the core of Yasser Said's worldview. His daughters weren't people. They were possessions, property to be controlled, monitored, and disciplined. How important was your daughter's virginity to you? This is a very important issue to anyone in the Middle East. And I imagine that if they were not virgins, that could compromise or undermine a plan to arrange their marriages, right? Most, one married a girl, she's not. So if they were having, the Middle East, not here. If they were having sex, would that have given you a motive to kill them? No. I told you, I didn't think the way they think over there in the Middle East. It's a convenient answer, but the evidence tells a different story. Because years before the murders, something happened in the said household. Something that would reveal the true nature of Yasser Said's relationship with his daughters. And then there's the question of your own sexual assaults against your daughters when they were young children. Did the court say that? This is accusation. Why you bring accusations? It's not just an accusation. You were investigating for it. If you have something against me, why you bring it? Because it's part of the record. It's not just an accusation. You were actually investigated and indicted for it. You were indicted for 2 counts for penetration of the vagina and/or anus of a child by penis and/or finger. No. This is all fake. This is false. These are lies. But it's not lies. In 1998, when Amina was 9 years old and Sarah was 8, they told their grandmother that their father was sexually abusing them. The police investigated. Yasser Said was indicted on 2 counts of sexual assault of a child. The details were horrific. The girls described specific acts, specific clothing he wore, gray shorts, a gray t-shirt, but the case never went to trial. Because Yasser Said did what controlling men often do. He threatened his wife. He told Patricia that if the girls didn't recant their accusations, he would kill her. Out of fear, Amina and Sarah recanted. The case was dismissed. You don't deny that this indictment is part of the record, right? No. This is false. False. Why would your 8-year-old and 9-year-old daughters tell people that my father put his front part inside my front part? No. He was wearing gray shirts, gray shorts and a t-shirt. Very detailed accusations. And then investigated, and you were in fact indicted. That's nothing even close to the truth. Dr. Hanlon, the forensic psychologist, believes this history of abuse is crucial to understanding the murders. I think growing up in the said household must have been very tough, very hard, very emotionally and physically and mentally draining. You have a father that's explosive, that's abusive, who's watching your every move. You probably feel very caged. It's just as likely that he killed these girls because he had lost control of them and they were going to pursue other sexual interests, which he could not tolerate. That, to me, is very different than the concept of honor killing. The weeks before the murders were filled with escalating tension. Amina and Sarah were planning their escape. They confided in teachers. They told friends. They were terrified of their father. On December 24, 2007, Amina and Sarah told people, including their mother, that you threatened Amina with a gun. You threatened to kill her. She told the teacher she was gonna run away because her father would kill her if he found her, right? They left the home. I didn't do any threats to my family. But then why would they lie about that? Should we not believe their own words? This was December the 21st of 2007, correct? That is correct. Amina's email to her teacher is heartbreaking in its clarity. She knew what was coming. We are running away before the break ends. I know he will search for us until he finds us, and he will, without any drama or doubt, kill us. She's talking about you. Well, I don't think this is true. You don't believe that? No, I didn't believe that. It's in an email she wrote to a teacher. I don't know how this email is made, and I don't know if it's real or not. Fake. I think so. Really? I think so. Yes. Yasser Said's denial is absolute. Even when confronted with his daughter's own words, written in her own hand, predicting her own death, he refuses to accept reality. And so we arrive at the night of the murders. New Year's Day, 2008. The night everything ended. Let's talk about the night of the murders. Tell me, Mr. Said, in your own words and in as much detail as you can, what happened that night. I was going to talk to them. And this car followed me. You became alarmed that you thought you were being followed, right? And then what happened next? I stopped in an area where everyone can see us. The dark bus station. I left. You left the car. I left. I was mad and I left. Just take my keys and left. You were mad or you were afraid? Boss, you need to know who's following this car. They said, later on in the court, I find out the father of the boy, one of the boyfriends, it was one of this car. Because I say 2 cars, they say 1 car. This is Yasser Said's story. And it makes no sense. According to him, he was taking his daughters out to dinner when he noticed a car following him. Fearing for his life, he abandoned his taxi, left his daughters inside, and fled on foot. And in the 4 minutes that followed, someone else shot and killed both girls. It's absurd, and the evidence proves it. You had never reported any threats against you. You never called the police or asked for help. Why did you think you were in danger? They want to get rid of me. Not the girls. Who wanted to get rid of you? Who would be following you and trying to get rid of you? That's what FBI want to know. What this car was following me. This car. These 2 cars. Why they always follow me. And what they see. And where is the man who has followed me? Where he go? Is this as not important questions? I can smell the conspiracy. Conspiracy is very strong. The smell of conspiracy. It's Yasser Said's refrain. His mantra, his excuse for everything. But the phone records don't lie. At 7:29 p.m., Yasser Said answered a call from his wife. He was still in the car with Amina and Sarah. He made no mention of any threat, no mention of being followed. 4 minutes later, Sarah called 911 with her dying breath. You were in the car at 7:29. You took that phone call. And then 4 minutes later, just 4 minutes later, your brave daughter Sarah uses her last breath to call 911. 4 minutes later. So this elaborate conspiracy you talk about would have had to happen between 7:29 and 7:33. I'm not sure about the time. You had a gun, a firearm in the car? No, I would not have the gun in the car. I wish I have it. But your testimony in court, you acknowledged leaving the gun in the car. So what did you do with your gun? Because it's a dangerous area where I'm going to work at night. I would take my gun with me and place it between the seats and the cubby. But not every day. You left the gun in the car. Is that what you're saying? Yes. Why would you leave your gun behind at this time? You didn't think about the guns. You think about to run for your life. You were running for your life. Yes. And you didn't think to keep your gun to protect yourself. There are so many contradictions in your story. That's why I'm asking you. You sense danger, but you left your girls to face it on their own. I never thought it would go that far. You never thought they were shooting? I thought I'm the one they target. Me, not the girls. But how would you know if you didn't know who was after you? You didn't know why. You thought there was a threat, but you left your girls to face it themselves. What father would leave his girls behind to face danger on their own? Well, this was a mistake. I said I'm not supposed to stop to begin with. I said that, but the issue is, where is the camera? Why they don't want to see the camera? The surveillance camera. You make it sound like you're the victim here. Is that what you think? Exactly. You're the victim. Yes. Dr. Hanlon explains that this is typical behavior for certain types of killers. It is not uncommon for individuals convicted of murder to spin the crime as if they were somehow victimized. His classic antisocial personality. He's going to lie directly to the interviewer. He's going to lie directly to the camera because he believes it's in his self-interest to do so. Yasser Said isn't just denying his guilt. He's rewritten the entire narrative in his mind. In his version of events, he's the hero. He's the victim. He's the one who's been wronged. And his daughters, the ones who died terrified in the back of his taxi. They barely register. The case was called the honor-killing murders in the media, right? Right. What do you think about the practice of honor killings? Is that condoned in your culture? I tell you, if you want to know I'm killing you over there, I'm telling you about how they think, how their mind over there. They have closed mind in this issue. But for me, because I live in America more than 4 decades, I think different than these people. But if you want to know, yes, over there, this is the issue. So an honor killing is essentially if you do anything to dishonor the family, anything that brings shame to the family, especially as a woman or as a young girl. In order to restore the honor back to the family, basically you have to kill. It's your life for the honor. The victims tend to be individuals who are defiant and unwilling to follow the commands of the father figure or the adult male who expects the child to marry someone that has been chosen by the father. Although sometimes associated with Muslim countries, the practice of honor killing has no basis in religion. It originates in certain tribal cultures around the world. It's actually nowhere in the Quran in regards to any of those things. I mean, these are culturally based beliefs. But there was a terrible irony behind the media headlines in Yasser Said's case. In the years leading up to their murders, it wasn't Amina or Sarah who brought shame to the family. It was Yasser Said himself. And Amina knew it. Weeks before she died, she wrote to her teacher about her father's past abuse. About how, when we were younger, he used to do things. And he started hinting at them again. Would that have given you a motive to kill them? Not because of their disgraceful behavior, but to cover up your own disgraceful behavior. Amina was talking about your sexual abuse of her again. And she told the teacher that when we were younger, he used to do things and he started hinting at them again. Did you kill your daughters to shut them up from making these accusations? Oh, this is not. This is just accusation. Why you? Why in a serious case like this? These are her words. What you bring accusations? These are Amina's words. We're talking about your daughter Amina. These are her words. No. I didn't believe that. That's even her word. You don't? I didn't believe it. No. Sorry. Okay, sorry. I didn't believe this bit. But I don't know. You still say this is a political conspiracy, even with all this evidence. Let me ask you this, Mr. Said, because your story defies logic and common sense and frankly all belief. I'm not even sure you believe it, but your family certainly doesn't seem to believe it. The jury didn't believe it. It's impossible to imagine that these crimes are the result of an elaborate conspiracy when, in fact, your daughters had been threatened, they say by you, and were found dead in your taxicab, last seen with you. Does that make sense to you? Listen, I guess I say everything to you. I answer every question. I know the FBI didn't do the Irving police, they hide something. The media was not honest in this case, especially in this case, to achieve political point overseas. That's all what I can say to you. For 12 years, you stayed hidden. Is that the action of an innocent man? You never turned yourself in. How were you able to do that? Immediately after the murders, you disappear for 12 years. You didn't even go to the funerals to mourn them. Go to the funeral? Yes, I was. No, I will not get a fair trial. That's why you disappeared, even before there were media reports. How do you want me to go to the funeral? What innocent man would not go to mourn their daughters at their funerals? Most of the people advise me not to go to the funeral. Who told you not to go to the funeral? Everybody. What do you mean, your family? No, even the community. How were you able to stay hidden for so long? When people around you, when your community know you're not a criminal, you get help from the community. You mean your family? No, the community too, by itself. The Muslim people in your community tell us that you didn't attend mosque. They didn't really know you. You didn't even attend the mosque service for your daughter. So I highly doubt that the mosque helped you. This is the truth that Yasser Said doesn't want to admit. He wasn't helped by his community. He was helped by his family. His brother Yasser, his son Islam. For 12 years, they kept him hidden. They brought him supplies. They enabled a murderer to evade justice. And when filmmaker Nina Najad got too close to the truth, when she started asking questions, Yasser's son lashed out with death threats. It was scary. It was kind of unexpected. But faith that goes to that extent to try to threaten me shows me that you're scared. And why would you be scared unless you're hiding something or someone? Because they could have just not said anything. The threats confirmed what Nina suspected. Yasser Said was still in Texas. And he was running scared. Nina's film, The Price of Honor, premiered in Dallas in 2014. We had security because we knew some of his family members were gonna be there. So we have security. So I know they're aware of the film. The movie helped put Yasser Said back on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. And law enforcement soon got a tip about an inconspicuous house in Justin, Texas. Just 30 miles from where Amina and Sarah were killed. Police watched the house for several days. And finally, arrested Yasser Said, 12 years after the murders. Remarkable to me that he was able to maintain his freedom and not be detected by law enforcement as long as he did. This is a very smart guy who was able to pull that off. Yasser's brother Yasser and son Islam orchestrated an elaborate system for supplying the fugitive in his hideout. Both are now serving long sentences in federal prison for aiding and abetting. As our interview draws to a close, I give Yasser Said one final opportunity. A chance to take responsibility. To show even a shred of remorse. Mr. Said, you seem to be without conscience or remorse, either for the dead or the living whose lives you ruined. Are you not prepared today to take responsibility for any of your crimes? I didn't do crime. My history. Check my history first. Because you talk about somebody, I'm the only one here without criminal report, without crime. And you know that, because when it comes to politics, it become dirty. Amina herself, she knew this was gonna happen. She told people this was gonna happen. We are running away before the break ends. I know he will search for us until he finds us. And he will, without any drama or doubt, kill us. Those are the words of your own daughter Amina, about you, just weeks before you murdered them. I didn't murder. No, I didn't murder nobody. Why would she write this? I don't think even she writes this. I don't know. This is very shocking news for me. I don't know. Just let me read some of her other words to you. God, I am so scared right now. As you know, we are not allowed to date, and my dad is trying to arrange my marriage. We do not want to live by the culture or marry men from over there, especially men we do not know or love. My dad began checking phone records, and he took my sister in the room and specifically threatened to, quote, hurt her very badly if she didn't tell what was going on with the dating. When we were younger, he used to do things and he started hinting at them again. He has simply made our lives a nightmare. He's one man, not God. Someone should be able to stop him. Those are your daughter's words. No, I didn't believe this as her words. Because what I see is different. I always take care of them. I always take them everywhere. See, that didn't make sense. Why would she say these things? I don't know. I don't think even she say that. Are you sure you don't want to take this opportunity to face up to these crimes and take responsibility for your actions? No, I didn't do any crime. Let's check my history to know who you're talking about before. I didn't do any crime. That's all. That's all. What can I do? I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much. And just like that, Yasser said had enough. The interview was over. He disappeared once again, just like he had years earlier. But this time, into the bowels of a Texas state prison where he will spend the rest of his life. As I walk out of that prison, the weight of what I just witnessed settles over me like a shroud. I spent an hour sitting across from a man who murdered his own daughters. And in all that time, not once did he show remorse. Not once did he take responsibility. Not once did he acknowledge the humanity of Amina and Sarah. Instead, he spun conspiracy theories. He painted himself as the victim. He laughed at his dead daughter's fears. This is what evil looks like. Not the monster from horror movies. Not the raving lunatic, but a calm, collected man who has convinced himself that he did nothing wrong. A man so deeply narcissistic, so utterly devoid of empathy, that he cannot see past his own self-interest. Dr. Hanlon's assessment echoes in my mind. This man is extremely egotistical, self-centered. Some, particularly some psychopaths, narcissistic psychopaths, they want the attention. His classic antisocial personality. He's going to lie directly to the interviewer. He's going to lie directly to the camera because he believes it's in his self-interest to do so. But this story isn't really about Yasser Said. It's about two young women who deserved so much more than the hand they were dealt. They wanted to be average teenagers, average American girls. They had dreams, they had hopes, they had ambitions and things they wanted to do in life. I think they were just both amazing, amazing human beings. Very strong, very just loving and caring and nurturing. Amina Said dreamed of becoming a doctor. She was intelligent, driven, compassionate. She wanted to help people, to heal, to make a difference in the world. Sarah Said was artistic, creative, full of life. She loved music. She loved to laugh. She had her whole future ahead of her. Both girls were honor students. Both were working part-time jobs, saving money for college. Both had friends who loved them, boys who cared about them, teachers who saw their potential. They were American teenagers navigating the complexities of adolescence, figuring out who they wanted to be, what they wanted from life. They were on the cusp of adulthood, standing at the threshold of freedom and possibility. And their father took it all away. Because in Yasser Said's twisted worldview, his daughters weren't people with agency and autonomy. They were extensions of him, property to be controlled. And when he lost that control, when they dared to assert their independence, he couldn't tolerate it. The term honor killing suggests that there's some twisted logic behind these murders. That in certain cultures, killing your daughter to restore family honor makes sense. But there's no honor in what Yasser Said did. There's no logic. There's no justification. There's only a controlling, abusive man who couldn't accept that his daughters were their own people. Who couldn't tolerate their growing independence. Who chose murder over letting them go. And the saddest part, Amina and Sarah saw it coming. In the weeks before their deaths, they tried everything to escape. They confided in teachers. They ran away with their mother. They made plans for a new life. But their mother betrayed them. Patricia said, whether out of fear or misguided loyalty or years of conditioning, lured her daughters back into their father's grasp. And on New Year's Day, 2008, Yasser Said drove Amina and Sarah to a parking lot. And he shot them multiple times, and he left them to die in the back of his taxi. Sarah, even as she lay dying, even as her life slipped away, used her final breath to call for help, to identify her killer, to make sure the truth would come out. "My dad shot me. I'm dying." Those were among her last words. And they echo across the years, a testament to her courage, her strength, her refusal to let her father's crime go unnoticed. Had they survived, Amina and Sarah would be in their mid-30s now. Amina might have realized her dream of becoming a doctor. She might have been saving lives, healing the sick, making the world a better place. Sarah might have pursued art or music. She might have fallen in love, gotten married, had children of her own. They might have been living the lives they dreamed of. Free, independent, happy, but we'll never know, because their father stole that future from them. One of the things with Amina, the last things that she posted, was she made this like a little card with her picture saying, "I don't want to be a memory." And then that was one of the things that we wanted for her. Not to just be a memory, for people to know her and her story. And that's why their story must be told. Why we can't let Amina and Sarah Said become just another statistic. Just another headline that fades from memory. Because behind every murder, there's a mind that conceived it. But there's also a life that was taken. A future that was stolen. A light that was extinguished. Amina and Sarah Said were more than victims. They were vibrant, intelligent, courageous young women who fought for their freedom until their final moments. They deserved better than the father they were born to. They deserved better than the culture that valued control over compassion. They deserved better than a mother who betrayed them. They deserved to live, and while we can't give them back their lives, we can ensure they're not forgotten. We can tell their story. We can honor their memory. We can learn from their tragedy. Because the uncomfortable truth is that Amina and Sarah's story isn't unique. Around the world, even today, young women are being controlled, abused, and killed by male relatives who believe they have the right to dictate every aspect of their lives. These so-called honor killings claim thousands of victims every year. The United Nations estimates that 5,000 women are murdered annually in honor killings, though the real number is likely much higher. And while the practice is often associated with certain regions or religions, the truth is more complex. Honor killings have occurred in cultures around the world. They're rooted not in any one faith, but in patriarchal tribal customs that view women as property. It's actually nowhere in the Quran in regards to any of those things. These are culturally based beliefs. The victims tend to be young women who dare to make their own choices, who fall in love with the wrong person, who refuse arranged marriages, who pursue education or careers, who simply want the freedom to live their own lives. And the perpetrators are often their own family members, fathers, brothers, uncles, men who believe that a woman's autonomy is a threat to family honor. In Yasser Said's case, there's an additional layer of horror, because evidence suggests his motivation wasn't just about control or honor. It was about covering up his own crimes. The sexual abuse allegations, the indictment, Amina's statements to her teacher that he was hinting at things again. It's just as likely that he killed these girls because he had lost control of them and they were going to pursue other sexual interests, which he could not tolerate. That, to me, is very different than the concept of honor killing. So was this truly an honor killing? Or was it the desperate act of an abuser afraid of being exposed? Perhaps it was both. Perhaps Yasser Said wrapped his own perverse motivations in the language of honor and culture to justify the unjustifiable. What's clear is that Amina and Sarah Said lost their lives not because of anything they did wrong, but because their father couldn't accept their humanity. As I drive away from the prison, I think about the question that haunts every true crime story. Could this have been prevented? The warning signs were there. The 1998 sexual abuse allegations, the investigation, the indictment. If the system had pursued that case, if Amina and Sarah's recantations had been questioned more thoroughly, would they still be alive? When they fled on Christmas Day 2007, when they found safety with Eddie and Eric, they had a chance. But their mother brought them back. When Amina emailed her teacher, when she explicitly stated that her father would kill them, was there anything more that could have been done? These are the questions that torment the people who knew Amina and Sarah. The friends who tried to help. The teachers who listened to their fears. The boys who loved them. But the truth is, sometimes evil is unstoppable. Sometimes, no matter how many warning signs there are, no matter how many people try to help, tragedy strikes anyway. And when it does, all we can do is seek justice. Hold the perpetrators accountable, and tell the stories of those who were lost. Yasser Said will spend the rest of his life in prison. He's an old man now. He'll never taste freedom again. He'll die behind bars, forgotten and alone. His brother and son, who helped him hide for 12 years, are serving their own sentences. The Said family, once united in their efforts to protect Yasser, has been torn apart by the consequences of his crimes. And somewhere in Texas, there are two graves. Two young women who should have lived long, full lives. Who should have been mothers and daughters and wives and friends. Instead, their memories, frozen forever at 18 and 17. Their potential unrealized, their dreams unfulfilled, but their story lives on. And as long as we continue to tell it, as long as we refuse to let Amina and Sarah Said be forgotten, they remain more than just victims. They become symbols, reminders of the cost of control, the price of honor, the tragedy that unfolds when patriarchy and abuse go unchecked. Murder is the ultimate betrayal of humanity. And this one sears the soul. But perhaps, in telling this story, in shining a light on the darkness that consumed Amina and Sarah's lives, we can help prevent the next tragedy. We can empower other young women in abusive situations to seek help. We can train law enforcement and educators to recognize the warning signs. We can challenge the cultural beliefs that enable violence against women. We can honor Amina and Sarah not just by remembering how they died, but by fighting to ensure that others don't meet the same fate. I don't want to be a memory. Those were Amina's words, her plea, her hope, and while we couldn't save her life, we can grant her wish. By telling her story, by speaking her name, by refusing to let her fade into obscurity, we ensure that Amina Said is more than a memory. She's a legacy, and so is Sarah, two young women who deserved so much better, who fought for their freedom until the very end, who, even in death, continue to inspire change. Rest in peace, Amina and Sarah Said. Your voices have been heard. Your stories have been told. Your lives mattered, and they always will. As for Yasser Said, sitting in his prison cell, still proclaiming his innocence, still spinning his conspiracy theories, I leave you with one final thought. He wants you to believe he's the victim. He wants you to question the evidence. He wants you to think there's some grand conspiracy that framed an innocent man. But the truth is simpler and more horrifying than any conspiracy. A father murdered his daughters, and he's spent every moment since trying to avoid responsibility. His daughters predicted their own deaths. They told teachers. They told friends. They ran away in fear. And in her final moments, Sarah used her dying breath to identify him. My dad shot me. 3 words that seal his guilt forever. No conspiracy. No elaborate plot. Just the last testament of a brave young woman who refused to let her killer escape justice. That's the truth, and no amount of denial, No elaborate theories, no claims of victimhood can change it. Yasser Said is exactly where he belongs. Behind bars, for the rest of his life. And Amina and Sarah Said are exactly what they always were. Innocent victims of a controlling, abusive father who couldn't accept their freedom. This is their story, this is their legacy, and this is why we remember. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of the importance of speaking up when you see abuse, then their deaths weren't entirely in vain. Because every time we tell this story, every time we refuse to look away from uncomfortable truths, every time we stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, we honor Amina and Sarah's memory. And we take one more step toward a world where no young woman has to die for wanting to be free. Thank you for listening to their story. And please, don't let them be forgotten. If this case shocked you, if you want to learn more about other true crime stories that expose the darkest corners of human nature, check the video on your screen now. I believe it was made for you.